Welcome back to The Truth About Vaccines. This is our 7th and final episode. How do you feel about forced vaccinations? Are you familiar with the term homeoprophylaxis? Both of these topics and many more will be covered in tonight's final episode. I hope you enjoy it. We begin this final episode with some valuable information on homeoprophylaxis, which is HP for short. It's basically the equivalent of homeopathic immunization. In homeopathy, the phrase like to cure like is often used. The basic theory is that any substance which can produce symptoms in a healthy person can cure similar symptoms in someone who's sick.
Homeoprophylaxis has been around for over 200 years, and it's really about the use of what we call nosodes in homeopathy, and they're made from disease products or animal, mineral, or vegetable products as the source, and then they're diluted and potentized so there's no original molecules left in the substance. But what we have is an energetic frequency of that substance, and when that's introduced into the human system, it basically educates the immune system so that the person can recognize the disease if met in nature and build an immune response, an appropriate immune response. So it's very safe. There's no additives, there's no adjuvants, there's no preservatives. These are not grown on foreign mediums. No antibiotics. There's never been a death from homeoprophylaxis. It's been utilized worldwide very, very effectively, and a number of different studies have taken place that have confirmed its effectiveness and safety.
I've got ways to address and sensitize the immune system much safer than the injection of toxic medicaments that if you put in a baby's bottle and had them drink it, you could be arrested for attempted murder. But they inject it and say, oh, it's fine. So we utilize something called homeoprophylaxis at home. You know, my kids have not been vaccinated and they've never even had an antibiotic because we have a different way to look at the body and support immunity. And homeoprophylaxis uses homeopathic forms of diseases or disease processes. We call these things nosodes, N-O-S-O-D-E, or nosodes. And this is a safe way you can take a killed form of a pathogenic material, if you will, viruses, bacteria, fungal species, and safely address them via serial dilution and succussion into a homeopathic form, and then administer them orally typically, and you can sensitize the immune system without devastating it, gently putting the signaling in. And in this case, you can see prevention, and there have been studies that have shown that this is efficacious as diseases drop. You know, I think it was leptospirosis in Cuba that they had done the nosodes because they couldn't get the vaccine, and it was an inadvertent study analysis that kind of put a very embarrassing mark on the vaccine belief that it takes substances at toxic levels, albeit small, but still toxic in my opinion, levels into the body. They were using nosodes and found it prevented the disease much more efficiently with no adverse effects.
Dr. Isaac Golden talked to us about the Cuban study where in Cuba where they have leptospirosis. It's an endemic disease that occurs during the hurricane season. So high rain and flooding, people are able to contract leptospirosis. So they immunized their entire country for leptospirosis. And in 2007 and 2008, there were multiple hurricanes that came through. They weren't able to immunize everyone, and they utilized homeoprophylaxis then and had incredible results with 2.3 million people in a few different regions. And what they found was a reduction of the incidence of leptospirosis, while in the other regions there was an increase in the incidence of lepto. So highly successful study at that time. And then Isaac also did a study with about 3,000 children in Australia, where he gave those children the homeoprophylaxis for the common diseases on the recommended list: pertussis, measles, mumps, and he studied those children for 15 years. So he looked at their long-term health over a period of 15 years and found that they had fewer colds, fewer sore throats, fewer ear infections, that they had better general immunity and health just as a process of receiving these nosodes. He compared those children to some other groups, vaccinated, unvaccinated, and found much better results with those children.
So the nosodes we can use in a few ways. One of them I like is in place of, although a lot of folks get a little up in arms about saying that. But the concept of vaccination as it's from Jenner's time forward has been applied as abhorrent, the way they do it. I'm not opposed to stimulating antibody production gently, safely, but I would do it homeopathically with the nosodes. You can also, in some ways, reduce the potential toxicity for those that feel like they're trapped and they've got no way out. Prepare their body perhaps to have a lesser incidence or intensity of an adverse event. I'm not saying that I would guarantee that, but if push came to shove, I would have you use a nosode prior to a vaccine. But the other way is to detoxify from previous vaccines. You can use nosodes or the actual vaccine material and convert it into a homeopathic form, which is not technically a nosode in the same way, but it can sensitize the system to start throwing out some of the damage, the initial insult and assault to the body, even decades before, to undo some of that damage after the fact. I mean, I'd rather not have to undo damage that's caused, if you understand what I'm saying, but we have a lot of people that are damaged and injured. So that's another protocol technique to help detoxify from the adverse impact that the vaccines initially kind of unleashed.
Homeopathic immunizations, or homeoprophylaxis, HP, is the use of potentiated substances called nosodes in a systematic manner to prevent the development of the characteristic symptoms of disease. HP is produced from the actual disease, much like the concept in vaccines. The difference lies in the degree of attenuation or weakening of the original antigen. With HP, the source material is diluted until no original molecules remain. The substance is rendered harmless and has become energetic as opposed to material. This diluted solution is then anointed onto pellets and taken orally. The energetic frequency delivers information to the recipient, familiarizing him or her with the disease pattern. When later encountered in nature, the disease is either not contracted at all or, if contracted, addressed effectively with a mature, natural immune response. Dr. Robert Scott Bell and Cilla Watcott both mentioned the Cuba study. In that study, where homeoprophylaxis was used on 2.3 million people, the conclusion of the authors was that this approach was associated with a large reduction of disease incidence and control of the epidemic. The results suggest the use of homeoprophylaxis as a feasible tool for epidemic control. Further research is warranted. In the Republic of India, there are several states where homeoprophylaxis is the government-approved treatment and even preventative of many diseases.
50 years back, exactly, 50 years back, there was the government of Kerala approved homeopathy as a system of medicine, officially approved. And later on they started a department of homeopathy for the treatment of people. Through this department, free treatment is given to the people.
Free treatment?
Yeah, of course. Once a person comes, he will have to pay 2 rupees for the registration. It's only for the namesake. Then lifelong free treatment will be given, medicines, and also prophylaxis will be given. Because in our department, we have a special body called REACH, Rapid Action Epidemic Control Cell Homeopathy. Through this, we give prophylaxis anytime, not only during epidemic, even for endemic diseases or even for diseases that may appear, for example, tuberculosis, pertussis, any other disease, we give on regular basis homeopathic prophylaxis. Everywhere the government has got different levels of treatment. For example, the state government, we have a local government, local finance government, the panchayat, the taluk. So at every government sector there will be one homeopath who will be invited for the meet for planning of health policies and all. A homeopath will be invited and his opinion is given great importance. So we have the right to say what to give. They will ask, the ministers will ask what homeopathy can do. So we get, of course, we get a good support. And even many modern medical doctors support us.
In 1999, there was a very big epidemic, and the efforts of the homeopaths were required in large number. Then the government, the allopathic modern medicine department, they said that we are helpless in this particular situation. So the government gave an order that all allopathic network has to cooperate with homeopaths in distributing this medicine. Government brought an order And the health minister of that particular state was a medical doctor. She was a gynecologist. And the chief minister said, if you want to continue as a health minister, you have to control this disease. Then she called for a meeting of all allopaths and homeopaths. Then they said, allopaths, we have to import the vaccine from China or Korea. It takes a long time. Even if we import also, we can't say whether this vaccine will be effective in controlling this particular episode of Japanese encephalitis. Then homeopaths were asked, can you do anything? That was the time I was also present in the meeting. Then already I have an experience of treating the cases. Then I have shown a particular case, how effective this particular medicine, that's evidence-based medicine. We have a huge network of around 500 homeopathic government dispensaries. It means clinics, right. All of them. Apart from that, 1,500 primary health centers of allopathic network. Everybody provided this particular one. That's how we could reach to 20 million of children in a short span. Otherwise, it would not have been possible. That's how almost 20 million children were covered with homeopathic medicines. By 2000, the cases were almost 1/4. In 2002, 3, and almost cases started coming down from 3 digits to single digit. By 2004, there was neither mortality nor morbidity out of this particular one. Here, very interesting point is only the state of Andhra Pradesh gave this BCT, whereas other states, neighboring states like Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Uttar Pradesh, they were also equally affected by this Japanese encephalitis. Still, the mortality is very high in those states. Only in Andhra Pradesh it has come down. The government of India now it has taken up a massive project of implementing the same strategy in other states.
It's encouraging that in the Republic of India, classically trained medical doctors work hand in hand with homeopaths and natural doctors in order to ensure that the patients, mostly children, get the best possible outcome. Another crucial piece of the overall health puzzle for infants is breastfeeding.
For babies who are most likely to be affected by bacterial diseases, breastfeeding is what really fends off those infections. For example, in Sweden, it has been shown that the risk of meningitis, Hib meningitis, was down 4-fold in exclusively breastfed babies. And the whole reason why meningitis even rose was because of the switch from breastfeeding to formula feeding that happened in the second half of the 20th century.
Really?
Yes. Instead of reverting meningitis by introducing breastfeeding or by encouraging breastfeeding, they introduced the vaccine for it.
Okay.
So even though Hib meningitis in infancy is the problem of under breastfeeding, the solution was not really to reverse that naturally, but get the pharmaceutical product for it.
Why do you think that is?
Why? Well, I guess there is no money in encouraging anyone to breastfeed, but there's a lot of money in making vaccine.
If we want to practice evidence-based medicine, and if we want to do what is absolutely 100% the best for our children, we have to support women in exclusively breastfeeding. It is absolutely crucial that human babies drink human milk. And that's a hard thing to say, and it's a hard thing for some people to hear, because there are a lot of moms who have trouble breastfeeding. Just because it's good for you, just because it helps you, doesn't mean it's easy. So I just want to put that out there that, but we have literally thousands of studies that show that breastfeeding, exclusive breastfeeding, is absolutely crucial for lifelong health. So the goal is to have healthy children and healthy moms. And the truth is that our infant mortality rates are actually quite high in the United States compared to other industrialized countries. Our maternal mortality rates are also high. But one of the ways that we can vastly reduce our infant mortality rate is by getting our breastfeeding rates to close to 100%. We should have 99 to 100% initiation rates, and we should support moms to breastfeed. Because, breast milk is this living liquid. It's liquid gold. It is so good for the immune system, and human babies were designed to drink human milk. If we want to talk about real preventative medicine, it's not about vaccines. Real preventative medicine is about exclusive breastfeeding right from the beginning of life.
It is so important to have a vaginal birth through a healthy birth canal that's teeming with good bacteria that then become the beginning of that child's gut flora. You have a C-section in a sterile environment, you're in a hospital where there's hospital-acquired organisms, and that becomes your flora, and you get C. diff, and you're pooping blood and mucus, and that's not a good start. And in fact, the best way to cure those poor kids is get good probiotics and get that going.
Probiotics are essential to restore gut flora and balance the immune system. This is very important, especially if a child experienced an adverse reaction to a vaccine. Another ancient remedy that's been used for centuries as a method of providing natural immunity is essential oils. Here's Dr. Eric Zielinski describing how essential oils were even used to combat the bubonic plague.
It's an unbelievable story about taking oils like cinnamon, clove, eucalyptus, lemon, rosemary together and combining them in such a way where the vapors actually themselves combat the volatile organic compounds from the plague, from the virus. We actually see research, a very similar blend was researched recently, a clinical trial that actually shows it kills the flu virus. Just flat out, it kills. And again, clove, cinnamon, eucalyptus, rosemary, lemon, and orange, eucalyptus, rosemary. It's a synergy. It's a synergistic effect, and they combat viruses. I found this 1911 book from the Carnegie Library that started talking about essential oils with everything from pertussis, whooping cough, and pneumonia, and just infectious disease. And in the early 20th century, that's all that they used. I mean, that's what they used. In World War I, World War II, they were using oregano in time to combat gangrene and infection on the battlefield. So what happened? Well, we look at it, well, antibiotic happened. And the government and Big Pharma said, look, we got a solution. And it's cleaner, you don't have to smell like pizza, and it's very simple, and it's cheap. Take a pill. And some people are like, okay, makes sense. Well, that changed the paradigm. When the antibiotics came out, that changed the whole paradigm. That's the reason why we're in the situation that we're in today, if you look at it historically. That was the medicine, especially European doctors. You know, Dr. Valnet from France, that's what they used. And so aromatherapy wasn't, quote, invented until the early 20th century when René Gadefus burned his hand in a laboratory experiment. And the story goes, he was just frantic looking for something to help relieve his hand, and he saw a big vat of oil. He put his hand in there, it was lavender oil, just to help relieve it. He would have put it in anything. He was surprised at how quickly it healed and how there was no scarring. He's like, what in the world, what was that? They were just experimenting lavender oil. Well, it allowed him, it really opened up his eyes to look at the healing properties of lavender and other things, and that's where he wrote a book called Aromatherapy. And that was a French book. That's where we know what we do today based off of his studies now 100 years ago. Aromatherapy is the usage of the therapeutic use of essential oils. And there are 3 different ways you can use essential oils. Aromatically, and that is through a diffuser. You can apply them in a nebulizer or an inhaler, you know, like a steam sauna with eucalyptus, perfect. Also a topical. You could apply essential oils topically, or you can ingest them, which is a debated topic, but if done safely and wisely, it's very effective. Got some stuff on pneumonia too, because essential oils have been shown, thymol, carvacrol, geraniol, citronellol. These are the chemicals in oils like lemongrass, oregano, thyme. Yeah, and thymol, thyme, geraniol, rose. These are oils that have been proven to kill pneumonia. So what we see with whooping cough specifically is going back to the research that we see in 1911. They were injecting a 20% dilution in almond oil. So they had sweet almond oil and a 20% dilution of camphor. I mean, it knocked whooping cough in its pants. So camphor also is a main chemical in rosemary. So rosemary is a very common oil. And so what that means, folks, if your son or your daughter is battling whooping cough, even using it aromatically. But again, what's in that blend we talked about? Cinnamon, clove, rosemary, eucalyptus. I mean, they figured out how to kill the bubonic plague. Those oils are also effective against whooping cough as well.
Essential oils are most definitely time-tested medicine, and they help support natural immunity and the entire immune system. Macrophages are important cells of the immune system that are formed in response to an infection or accumulating damaged or dead cells. They're large, specialized cells that recognize and engulf and destroy target cells. Here's Dr. Marco Ruggiero discussing GC-MAF and Rerum and how they can be used to activate macrophages and even treat autism.
GC-MAF is an acronym for GC, globulin-derived macrophage activating factor. MAF stands for macrophage activating factors. Macrophages are cells of the immune system, and I was working on these cells when I was at the NCI, National Cancer Institute, in the early 90s. And one of my first papers on macrophages is published in PNS with many other colleagues. So it's a topic that I have been studying for the past 26 years. And there are many proteins or factors that may activate macrophages. And Japanese researchers worked, because now he's retired, in Philadelphia, identified another protein called GC-MAF. Now, this GC-MAF activates macrophages, and therefore we can define this protein as immune stimulant. And I began working with this Japanese doctor whose name is Nobuto Yamamoto in the late 2009, 2010, and we published a paper that we presented at the World AIDS Conference in Vienna in 2010, postulating that stimulation of the immune system could eradicate HIV infection, actually using the same words of Professor Luc Montagnier when he says that if you have a good immune system, you can get rid of the virus in weeks. So we published together this paper, and we kept on working on this molecule. Then I began collaborating with a biotech company in England, and at the first GC-MAF conference, immunology conference held in Frankfurt, Germany, I had the honor and privilege to meet Dr. Jeff Bradstreet. Now, Dr. Jeff Bradstreet had a good idea in those days. He knew that at least some forms of autism are associated with viral infections, mostly latent viral infections, but he knew that there was a relationship between multiple viral infections, or in general infections, and autism. So it was known that in autism there is a dysregulation of the immune system. So he thought that to try to rebalance the immune system of autistic children with GC-MAF could have been a good idea. And so this is what he did, and he published his first paper on this topic, I think in 2013, describing how treating children with GC-MAF improved some serological markers, but also, and this is most important, improved the symptoms. So he began his research on this protein. And we kept on doing our own research in the laboratory. And the more we studied this protein, and the more we published on the effects of this protein on cancer cells, on macrophages, and so on, the more we understood that the protein in itself was not the most important or the most active part of the molecule. So by studying the molecular structure of GC-MAF, we found out that the active sites were essentially four different things, four different molecules. One is a molecule called alpha-N-acetyl-galactosamine. Now, that is the molecule, by the way, removed by an enzyme that is called nagalase. And then we have vitamins of the D group, D2 and D3, a fatty acid whose healthy properties had been known for centuries, oleic acid, the basic principle of olive oil, and this was our major contribution to the field, a glycosaminoglycan that is a complex sugar called chondroitin sulfate. Now, this chondroitin sulfate is the molecule which mediates the activation of macrophages. In other words, the GC-MAF does not activate macrophages in and by itself. It does so through the interposition of this sugar that is called chondroitin sulfate. At that point, we were asked by Dr. Bradstreet if we could develop a molecule that was not extracted from human blood as the old GC-MAF was, that was not a protein, because protein, they have a series of difficulties to be handled, that had the same power the same activity of GCMF. So we began researching, we began studying, we began doing experiments in the laboratory, and we ended up with a new molecule that actually is not new at all. It is what happens in nature. And because of this, we gave a Latin name that means about nature, rerum. In Latin, rerum means of things, and it refers to the essay by the Roman philosopher of 2000 years ago, Titus Lucretius, who wrote an essay entitled De Rerum Natura, which means about the nature of things. This rerum is nothing else than the active parts of the old GCMF without the GCMF in itself. It had been demonstrated that autistic children have a very, very low level of TGF-beta. Whatever it means, it is not a good thing, because control children, they had normal level, and autistic children, they have a much lower level of TGF-beta. If you treat those children with GCMF, you do not raise the level of TGF-beta, remains the same. You have a number of good effects, no doubt about this, in particular on the endocannabinoid system, but not on TGF-beta. With rerum, TGF-beta goes up to normal levels after only 5 weeks of treatment. That's why doctors all over the world, to name one, Dr. Nicola Antonucci, who will speak this afternoon, are reporting results of children who already had benefits from GCMF, but not yet 100%. Let's say with GCMF they had gone from 20 to 60%. Now they add rerum, now they use rerum because GCMF is no longer available, and they are completely in a good shape.
Wow.
So this means that it does what all the old GCMF did plus more, just like a jet plane. It flies like the old propeller planes did, but more. Even though we are very proud of the rerum, nevertheless, don't think that the rerum is the miracle pill. Rerum has to be integrated into a protocol. That is a protocol that takes into account first and foremost nutrition. If you eat junk food, don't expect the rerum to do miracles, it won't do them. So first of all, control the nutrition. And the best nutritional approach for autism is the so-called ketogenic diet. A diet very, very low in carbohydrates and very high in healthy anti-inflammatory fats like olive oil or coconut oil, and amino acids, crystallized amino acids that do not overload the kidneys or the liver. So the ketogenic diet has to be the basis. On top of that, you can reconstitute the microbiome with probiotics. We developed one that is called Bravo probiotic, for example. And on top of that, you can add the rerum to rebalance the immune system and to rebalance also the immune system inside the brain and protect the neurons. But what I'm saying is that do not look for the magic pill, doesn't exist. If you don't fix nutrition first, if you don't fix your gut, your microbiome, then the rerum or anything else will do poorly. But if you do this under the supervision of a good and competent doctors, and there are very many, let me tell you, there are very many good doctors both in the United States and elsewhere, then you can expect very good results.
While discussing nutrition, one of the things Dr. Ruggiero mentioned was the ketogenic diet. Here's Dr. Tony Bark describing how a ketogenic diet can help to squelch inflammation and even reduce the symptoms of autism.
So, as you know from the work you've done, that ketosis and ketones are neuroprotective. So the brain actually functions better. You automatically see inflammatory markers dissipate when you are in ketosis. I mean, that's just, there's a lot of reasons. I don't know all the reasons, all the science behind it, but I know that's a fact, and I measure them on my patients, and inflammatory markers are 0.0 something on these patients. And the brain likes ketones, and it can use them readily. It doesn't have to do that much work, so it's neuroprotective, and the inflammation's gone. And, you know, and if you throw cannabis on board, especially if you've got something like a calcium channel that's working out of control, cannabis is a downregulator. That's why it's so great. I mean, that and the fact that it promotes fat burning, but it's a downregulator. So anything that's out of whack or out of control, it helps downregulate it. So these things are very helpful for kids with autism and so many other disease processes, right? So I like coconut oil, and I like hemp oil and olive oil. So I like to get the omega-3s in with hemp and either fish oil, hemp oil, flax, krill, chia seeds, and hemp seeds. I do for my cancer patients, I put them in a plant-based ketosis. Okay. My autistic patients don't have to be plant-based, but I do want them eating organically. Okay. And I do like them getting the saturated fat, especially in the beginning, to get the ketones boosted. So they can do MCT oil, or they can do a lot of coconut or palm oil. But eventually, really, once they're in ketosis, they just need fat, so healthy fat. So avocados, monounsaturates and some 3s, and then, coconut oil is great for many other reasons too. So those are usually the ones I rely on.
Good.
A lot of seeds and...
Yeah, that's a good solution for people that may have autistic children.
Yeah, it really is.
The diet does matter.
It does matter.
Dr. Bark mentioned the importance of healthy oils in maintaining ketosis. I remember back in the 1990s when I was a competitive bodybuilder, one of the fad diets that was becoming popular at that time was the Atkins diet. This was when many of my buddies began to eat lots of fats and protein and minimize carbohydrates. The problem was that nobody was really paying attention to the quality of the fats and the oils, which is of utmost importance. But one thing that was key to the Atkins diet, and is also a staple of the clean ketogenic diet, is avoiding sugar. You're an immunologist, right?
Yeah.
So you understand the immune system, and so you just mentioned sugar. So is that something that we should be aware of in regards to its effect on the immune system if you want to stay healthy?
Absolutely. So sugar has a very clear effect on a subset of cells called neutrophils. Neutrophils are cells that guard us from bacterial infections. And so they go through the body, and if they detect bacteria where bacteria are not supposed to be, they engulf bacteria, and this process is called phagocytosis. Now, when a sugar feed is given to people, it has been shown that reduces phagocytosis by neutrophils by twofold, and that effect lasts for 5 hours.
Wow.
So if you are eating a lot of sugar every 5 hours, your neutrophils are not functioning properly, and you may get away with the physiological effects of that if there is no infection going on at the moment. But if that happens while you're already sick and you keep eating sugar in the form of ice cream or whatever, your neutrophils will not be able to handle the infection.
So according to Dr. Tatiana Ubakanic, who's an immunologist, sugar has a detrimental effect on neutrophils, and it reduces their ability to perform phagocytosis, literally cell eating, by 50% for 5 hours every time you ingest sugar. That's a good reason to never eat sugar if you're sick or if you're recovering from an illness. The medical literature is clear that diet and nutrition actually do have a big impact on your health. And as these experts are about to share, certain vitamins can have a positive effect in protecting from various infections and diseases like measles, whooping cough, influenza, polio, and even may help prevent and or reduce the symptoms of autism.
The World Health Organization has come out and stated that they've done the research, okay, and I summarized the studies from the World Health Organization and from several other journals. Studies that confirm that children that have complications from measles or that die from measles have low quantities of vitamin A. Their nutritional status is very low for vitamin A, and vitamin A will protect babies, will protect children from complications and death associated with measles. And so they went and did a study, for example, where they had like 200,000 kids, and they broke them up into 2 groups. And this was in Africa. And these kids were coming into the hospital with measles. And they gave one group standard treatment. They gave the other group standard treatment plus high doses of vitamin A. And the group that received the standard treatment plus the high doses of vitamin A had reduction in mortality associated with the measles. So vitamin A is very important. And today, if we didn't vaccinate children in the United States, the best thing that you could do to protect, not against measles, you're still going to contract measles. Measles is very contagious. You're not going to stop children from being that are exposed to measles from contracting that disease. You'll never stop them from contracting the disease. And you don't want to stop them from contracting the disease, because I talked earlier that contracting the disease will offer you many benefits in later life. It will protect you against cancer. It will protect you against coronary heart disease. But it will protect you if you take high doses of vitamin A and you are exposed to measles and you do get measles. It will protect you from complications of the disease, and it will protect you from mortality.
Today, vitamin C is one of my primary tools as a medical doctor, and since I've discovered it, it's really been probably the best medication that I've ever used on myself or my patients. And I'm not the first to discover this. There have been many for decades before me, and one of the first to really embrace it and write about it and use it in all kinds of different situations was Dr. Fred Klenner. And a lot of people don't hear about Dr. Klenner because his writing is not something that circulates in conventional medical realms, because he was pretty forthright about calling the doctors of his time quacks. He just turned that term right around on them and showed in no uncertain terms that what they were doing was incredibly backwards and harmful. When he was curing cases of paralytic polio, he was using antibiotics, he was using steroids, and he was also using very high doses of intravenous or intramuscular vitamin C. And he outlines, there's copious amounts of writing of his, and he outlines in great detail exactly what his protocols were and how well they worked case after case after case. In not just polio, but influenza. He used it during pregnancy in very high doses, all throughout pregnancy, before delivery. Using vitamin C in infants, children, and adults who have whooping cough doesn't make the cough go away. It doesn't treat it like, say, some antibiotic could maybe treat a staph infection. It basically, what it does is it energizes the immune system, because, like I said, it gives the neutrophils the energy that it needs. And, there's something called apoptosis, which is what cells that need to die do. And so they basically involute so that they don't spill their caustic contents inside your body. If you don't have vitamin C, those neutrophils and macrophages that are just eating these, particles that are trying to infect you will just explode and cause even more inflammation. So vitamin C decreases inflammation in lots of ways. That's one. It's a direct antioxidant. So whooping cough is a toxin-mediated disease. You neutralize the toxin by putting electrons in there, and you notice a difference. It actually loosens up the secretions in the lung within 24 to 48 hours. The secretions become thinner and more watery. And it also, again, it frees up the liver to do its job. So as a toxin neutralizer and an immune system enhancer, and it also gives tissues the strength. You can't make collagen without adequate amounts of vitamin C. So it's not a miracle, and I'm very clear with parents before I get going, but so far there's been 100% success rate. No babies have died. I've treated babies as young as 2 weeks old. And it's no picnic. It's a nail-biting experience. But when the medical system has done everything they can do and the child is still extremely sick and the parents are looking for help, they often come to me. And sometimes they come to me before they go to the medical system because they're that confident in what they want. And you can read the testimonials. When I ask parents to write testimonials, I don't say to talk about me. I say I want you to talk about you, what your fear level was, what you expected, what the vitamin C did, and how you feel now. And so that's really what the testimonials are intended to do, is to just show other parents what vitamin C can do. It's not a miracle, but it makes the baby so that they're not turning blue anymore, they're not gasping for air, the coughs become manageable, your nights become easier. They're not always easy. There's a week where, there's a lot of sleepless time during that 1 week.
The immune system knows how to work with what was available naturally. It didn't have to wait until nutraceutical industry shows up in the last 50 years to make sure that the immune system works. So the nutrients that we must pay attention as far as viral diseases are concerned are vitamin A and vitamin C. For antibacterial ones, vitamin D is very important, as well as gut health, which meaning probiotics, because that helps utilize the vitamin D, and they work synergistically. Now, actually, it's kind of silly to talk about each vitamin separately, because once you go through the list, you see that all of them are necessary one way or another. And it's not only those vitamins, like the alphabetic list of vitamins, but also microelements, minerals, phytonutrients, pretty much everything in between, the whole gamut of nutrition and lifestyle.
Every parent and every doctor wants to have healthy kids. So how do you do it? Some of the ways sound so simple, but they're actually really hard. So the first thing is that we need to feed our kids real food. So real food for babies means breast milk exclusively, and real food for kids means food that is in its recognizable form. And that's not a very exciting thing to say, feed your kids food, but the very vast majority of children are not actually eating food. So if you even just look at the guidelines for how many vegetables kids are supposed to have, I recently did an interview in a middle school, and I talked to more than a dozen kids. Not a single child in that school had eaten a single vegetable as of 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And we're supposed to be eating vegetables with every meal because we know healthy vegetables help you have a healthy microbiome, help you have a healthy brain. So kids need to eat real food. We need to avoid toxins. 2 of those toxins, which are given like candy, are acetaminophen, the main ingredient in Tylenol, and antibiotics. Kids need to have as much exercise and outdoor time as possible. They need sunlight, they need vitamin D. But we have kids in chairs sitting all day when our bodies want to move and be outside. We need to have kids playing in the dirt, let them get dirty, let them get messy. And I'm not saying that because I think kids should wallow in mud. I'm saying that because we know that that exposure to dirt helps you create a better immune system and reduces your risk of autoimmune disorders.
How do you save children's lives? Well, you boost their nutrition to activate the genetic code that they all have that causes the expression of their immunology, which gives them the adaptive response to exposure to viruses in the wild. So with vitamin D, you're activating this huge portion of their gene code. You're actually invoking the power of their genetics to make them able to respond in a symptomless way. In other words, they don't get sick, they don't have a fever, they don't even know they were infected, but now they're immune because they have that built-in immunology system, that nanotechnology of human biology. And it's activated with things like vitamin D.
In February of 2013, I get the JAMA, Journal of American Medical Association. I'm a member just to keep track of what's going on. And that was on my desk, and I'm looking at this, and anytime I see the word autism in a study, I want to know what they're doing because we need more studies. So here's a huge study out of Norway. I think it was 60,000 moms, and the children followed for an average of 6 years. And they looked at the rate of autism in the moms who took folate while they were pregnant and the moms who didn't. It was a huge study, prospective, long-term, comparing these 2 groups. And
what is folate?
So folate is a B vitamin, B3, and we've known that you need folate to prevent huge brain defects, anencephaly, meningomyelocele, those sorts of things. So it's obviously important for something to do with brain. And we've been giving folate for well over a decade, maybe 2, for pregnancy. And but this was a great study to show the value. And the moms who took folate while they were pregnant, their autism rate was 1 in 1,000. And the moms who didn't, it was 1 in 500. So this is 2013. And I'm thinking, I just read it's 1 in 150 here in the U.S. What's the difference? Why is it 1 in 1,000? Because we give folate in the U.S. So why is it 1 in 1,000 there and it's 1 in 150 here? That was the aha, right? But there was no mention of that in the article. So I pulled up the vaccine schedule for Norway, and they don't do the hepatitis B vaccine. I'm not saying that's the whole reason, because they do breastfeed longer and much higher breastfeeding rates there. We know breastfeeding is protective. They have less toxins. There's no GMOs, or at least I don't think there are. So I'm sure there's lots of variables, but the exciting thing about that is just think about it, Ty. If we could do a few things here in the U.S. and get our rate from now 1 in 50 back to 1 in 1,000, how wonderful would that be? I mean, you're talking, we now have over 1 million autistic kids. We're creating over 100,000 a year with our current program of whatever it is that we're doing that's creating this. I do believe, this is a talk about vaccines, that's a big piece of the puzzle, but that's not the only piece. It's toxins, 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 and it's getting your nutrients, like folate in that study. It's actually good to have methylfolate, not regular folate for most people. And it's boosting the immune system. It's all about having a healthy immune system. That's what we need.
That's a recurring theme. As Dr. Paul Thomas just mentioned, the key to preventing disease is a healthy immune system. That's actually part of the theory behind vaccinations, stimulating the immune system and helping it to recognize various diseases. Dr. Thomas is a board-certified pediatrician who's also the co-author, along with Dr. Jennifer Margulis, of a book entitled The Vaccine-Friendly Plan, which is a selective and delayed vaccine schedule for those patients that do want to vaccinate, but not according to the current full CDC vaccine schedule.
I'll go back to 2008. I'm starting my new practice, and what I set up was what I've outlined in this book, The Vaccine-Friendly Plan, and that is a way to vaccinate that's a little gentler, way less toxic. So you don't do hepatitis B for newborns who don't need it, right? And we know. Our OBGYN colleagues have done a great job of testing women who are about to have a baby, and we know when they're delivering that they don't have hepatitis B. So that baby does not need that vaccine. Let's do that one when they're preteen, before they're sexually active, or early teens. So that one you wait. You also wait on polio, not because I'm against the polio vaccine. The elder generation, I have a nurse who's retired who lived through the polio era, and my own mom, in fact, and they were both like, and she's a nurse, they're both like, oh, I don't know about the polio. You better do the polio. But here's the fact. There hasn't been a case of polio acquired in the United States since 1979. There is no risk. If we want to do it, we can still do it later when the immune system is more developed, when you're not bombarding that little baby's developing immune system with so many challenges. So we wait on the polio. We don't do the rotavirus. So the rotavirus vaccine, that's
that's the one you were mentioning that Offit developed?
Offit developed the initial one. You're putting a live virus that's contaminated. These vaccines are not pure. They're contaminated with other viruses. Both the vaccines that are on the market have been proven to be contaminated. It makes no sense. So we're skipping Hep B, polio, rotavirus. And in the vaccine-friendly plan, what we are focusing on is the Tdap, mostly because of the pertussis. At 2 months, you do the Hib, which is preventing Haemophilus type B. We'll talk a little more about that. Okay. And the Tdap. So you're protecting against tetanus, diphtheria, and pertussis. The tetanus and the diphtheria are not an issue, really, for a kid that age, but it's the pertussis. You don't want that whooping cough and death, those 5 deaths per year or whatever. And then, rather than doing the Prevnar, which is the other serious bacterial disease, can be caused by pneumococcus. So the Prevnar 13, it replaced the Prevnar 7. That will prevent some meningitis and some serious infection, as will the Hib. Instead of doing them at the same time at 2 months, we move the Prevnar to 3 months. It also contains aluminum. So at 2 months, you're injecting Hib, which is a fairly safe vaccine, Tdap, which has too much aluminum, and then at 3 months, you do the other aluminum one, the Prevnar. And you repeat that 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, 9 months. And then you do your final Prevnar and Hib at a year. That's still a lot of vaccines, but it's half of what it would have been.
What about MMR? I don't remember, you didn't mention MMR.
So, yes. So on the vaccine-friendly plan, I made a somewhat arbitrary decision. That one worried me. I just decided I'm going to wait till age 3 because I had never seen a child regress into autism after age 3. Now, that was in 2008. I now have over 13,000 patients in my practice. I acquire all the patients in the area who want informed consent, who want to vaccinate differently. I acquire a lot of families who have autism in their family because, they're not getting the kind of care they need. And I have since heard one story of a child, the parents did exactly what I was thinking of doing, so wait till age 3, then do the MMR. And so far, in my own population, that's been fine. We haven't had any new autism in over 1,000 patients who followed the vaccine-friendly plan. But I did have one case where the family did that, not at my recommendation, they just came later. got the MMR after age 3 and their kid regressed. They actually had a family history of autism, so that does put them at a higher risk. If you don't have family history, what I promote, if you're going to vaccinate according to the vaccine-friendly plan, make sure you do not have a family history of autism or severe neurological problems and no autoimmune problems in the family. Those two groups seem to be at highest risk for regression into autism, and perhaps if vaccines are part of the problem. I'm not saying they are, but they sure look like they are. So the vaccine-friendly plan is a compromise. You're saying we can vaccinate slower without putting our kids at any greater risk for diseases that vaccines protect against, right? So you're not putting your baby at risk for Hep B. They're not at risk anyway. You're not putting your risk at risk for polio. There's none in America. You're not really at any greater risk by skipping the rotavirus, and you are reducing risk by spacing out aluminum-containing vaccines, and you're reducing your risk by waiting a bit on the MMR. I've studied my data, so I pulled my data in February of 2015 and broke it into 3 groups. I got an IRB, Institutional Review Board, to look at the data retrospectively. We weren't changing anything, we were just looking at our data. So we were approved to do that. And in the first group, it was the children over 1,000 who did the vaccine-friendly plan or less. Because, you know, when you do informed consent, it's interesting. People do different things. You know, how do you get, like I think about how before I really was doing informed consent, how did we get everybody to do the CDC schedule? Well, we were this is the right thing to do. End of discussion. There was no informed consent. And people just did it. You're their doctor, right? People trust their doctors, so you do what they say. If you look at my data, group 1, over 1,000 patients who followed the vaccine-friendly plan, no autism spectrum. When you look at 2 years and up, 4 years and up, same, no new autism. Group 2, we had 238 unvaccinated kids, no new autism spectrum. And group 3 was my more vaccinated kids, and we had 15 cases out of about 900. About 1 in 60.
Which is about what the autism rate is.
That's about what the rate is now. Now, you know, this was a retrospective study, so obviously you can tear it to shreds, but the p-value for researchers who want to know, it's amazing. 0.00001 is like 1 in 100,000 chance that this was by accident. You know, so I think if we do the good studies, let's take large groups of unvaccinated, selectively vaccinated, and CDC vaccinated children and just follow them over time. In my own study, what I found was that unvaccinated group of 238 patients by far were the least ill. So I also tracked how many office visits they came in for illnesses. I mean, it was like a fraction of the visits. These are healthy kids, and they're not vaccinated. So they have a robust immune system through your natural state, and probably better nutrition, maybe better, longer breastfeeding. I didn't have enough data to look at those factors, but immunity is different from vaccination. You know, vaccination, you're targeting that organism. And yes, you might boost the immunity against that organism, but what are you doing to the whole picture? And we're not looking at the whole picture. We need to.
It's interesting that Dr. Thomas did a retrospective study of over 1,000 of his own patients, and he found that the unvaccinated were the healthiest. Growing up, I was taught that vaccines were responsible for the decrease in mortality from many infectious diseases. Was this accurate?
Humanity can move in either direction, either towards health or away from health, depending on what's going on in society, what the stress levels of people, especially children, are, amount of sleep that they get, the food that they get, working conditions. And conditions were beyond what we can actually imagine today, unless maybe you visited some of the worst parts of India or some really poor countries that are, you know, just basically living in filth. That's what was going on back then. And so, of course, any disease that came along, measles deaths were rampant. You know, you didn't want to catch a disease back then because there was a good chance that you would die from it. So then the vaccines came along and were given, and the medical system came along and were given the credit for the death rates going down and for the lifespan increasing. But we've shown you with statistics that nobody argues with. See, even people who don't like us don't argue with the vital statistics because all we did was graph them out. And so what you can do is graph them out and see the death rate was going down, down, down. And in the case of measles and whooping cough, it was basically at baseline, it was basically close to zero, and then the vaccine comes in.
Dr. Larry, in 2000 there was an article in the Pediatrics Journal that describes that before World War II we looked at pertussis, measles, flu, tuberculosis, scarlet fever. All of these childhood diseases were actually being reduced, if not almost completely wiped out, before the introduction of the vaccine.
Right.
How do we explain that?
The actual article discussed the decrease in mortality in children between the ages of 1 and 19 before World War II. And what the data showed was a very large decrease in the mortality rates of children dying from infectious diseases. And in the article, the author concludes that without the presence of antibiotics and vaccines, these disease states and the mortality went down. And the reasons for the reduction in mortality were due to improved sanitation, improved water, better living conditions, and better nutrition.
You start looking at vaccines. Well, we have survived. Let's say we go by the traditional religious belief that man was made from Adam and Eve. Man started from Adam and Eve. Okay, 10,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago, whatever. Or we look at the evolutionary basis that we've been evolving for hundreds of millions of years. In either case, all the way up till 100 years ago, nobody used vaccines, and we've still survived. So now you tell me suddenly it becomes so important that we need to survive, so we need to take vaccines?
Many people say, if I'm not going to vaccinate, how do I keep my kids strong? That's based on two assumptions. One, that your child's immune system is not already strong. And two, that vaccines protect you and make you strong. So the body is already strong, but there's a way to keep it strong. There's a way to prevent it from weakening. But that doesn't utilize pharmaceuticals. It utilizes good food, good water, and healthy environments. And all studies have shown that good food, good water, and healthy environments create healthy kids.
As we look at the graphs of pertussis, measles, diphtheria, and mumps, we see that the mortality from these diseases had decreased drastically before the vaccines were even introduced. I want to thank Dr. Suzanne Humphreys and Roman Bystrianic for the graphs that you just saw. They're from their book, Dissolving Illusions. Is it possible that these diseases were actually eradicated as a result of better living conditions, improved hygiene, better nutrition, and clean water? There are many differing opinions on that specific topic. In light of this ambiguity and lack of consensus, let's look at what happened in California a couple of years ago with mandatory vaccines and Senate Bill 277. Here's a brief summary.
What's happening is, because the government wants to promote the vaccine program, they see that as the hallmark of public health, and we see it in California, mandate, no exceptions. Your kid doesn't go to school unless it gets the vaccine. So they're eliminating those rights, the right to education.
SB 277, as you know, taking away parents' rights to refuse, it's been published in the published health literature to become the model legislation for all 50 states.
We can't let this go on, and when families recognize it in their own families, then they're going to start asking the questions. They're going to vote. They're going to vote for people who aren't putting the big pharma mafia and mandating that our kids don't get an education if they don't get an injection. Where does that come from? You know, not since Thomas Jefferson and the Queen, who said if you didn't go with the Church of England, you didn't get an education. I thought we fought that in the 1700s. You know, really? We're back there? You don't get an education in America if you don't get an injection? Crazy.
It's astounding to me, sort of this disconnect. And I grew up a progressive liberal fighting for environment, you know, getting GMOs labeled and just trying to keep organic food, just keep our food clean, our water clean. In California, where I live, you know, we've just passed SB 277, which is a mandated vaccine law. My children can't go to school unless they're fully vaccinated, which at this point means 69 shots, you know, 69 vaccinations. It's insane. But what is crazy to me, it's the same people that wanted GMOs labeled. It's liberal, progressives, and Democrats that are pushing this mandatory vaccine agenda. I can't figure it out. I don't understand why you think Monsanto's a bad guy because they put, chemicals and pesticides all over your food, but you don't mind that the government's just taken ownership of your child over your best interests and said, we're going to inject your child with whatever we want, whenever we want, however we want. And then you look at what's inside of these vaccines. I mean, you want GMOs labeled, they have to label what's inside your vaccine if you request it, and you're not even looking at it. You're not looking at aluminum. We're talking about, a neurotoxin, mercury, formaldehyde. There's products get banned coming in from China because, oh my God, it's got formaldehyde in it. Yeah. What do you care? You've just had, your doctor just injected a ton of that into your newborn baby. Yeah. So I don't understand this disconnect. And that's what we're trying to work. I'm trying to work on. Look, if you believe in environmental issues and you're trying to make your air clean and your water clean, this is an environmental issue. These are the same toxins you're fighting to keep out of your air that are going, and that's something that will go through your nose. You eat it. That's an open system. You can purge that out of your body. We're talking about taking those toxins and putting it into your bloodstream, a closed system, where it has nowhere to go except ultimately into your brain.
Here's investigative reporter Jeffrey Jackson describing the events that occurred in Sacramento when there were thousands of mothers gathered to protest the passage of Senate Bill 277.
Sacramento Senator Pan, who was one of the authors of SB 277, he was asked to either vote on the bill that day or defer the bill, and with an entire community of parents standing room only, instead of turning to them and asking, instead of turning to the people that got him in office, he looked over to two people, and they came over and whispered in his ear. And those people were lobbyists. Those people were pharmaceutical lobbyists. So what that statement was, and a mother gave me a still shot of that, him listening to that, and we identified the people, who these people were, made sure they were pharmaceutical lobbyists. And what that said, the statement that said was, this man will take orders from here when his whole community is begging him not to pass that law. He deferred the vote, and the rest is history. I believe SB 277 was pushed through because when the CDC whistleblower, Dr. William Thompson, came forward, shortly after that was the measles outbreak in Disneyland. And after the measles outbreak, that was the motivation for this law to come through. They wrote it on back of the measles. And there was only 300 cases, and I believe there's no deaths. So I believe we're seeing a vaccine industry that had an agenda, a pharmaceutical company that had a long-term agenda, that was forced to launch that agenda faster than they wanted to, because they didn't see Dr. William Thompson coming. California caught everyone sleeping, and they're not asleep anymore. And I think moving forward, I was one of the first people that broke the story with Richard Pan and his lobbyists. SB 277 was perhaps the most important thing that ever happened to the vaccine injury movement and the opposition against pharmaceutical control, because it made it real for families now. And until that point, it was just a journalist writing about it. It was scrolled off a web page, it was a social media post, but now it's coming to their doorstep, and now they have to activate. And when people are forced out of comfort zones, especially when their kids are on the chopping block, they're going to activate, and it goes back to, this is a movement, and we are going to see mass amounts of civil disobedience. Parents will act. Parents will not lie down with this. And if the parents don't push back hard enough, the schools will act. The nurses will not follow orders. The teachers won't follow orders. The doctors won't follow orders. They will gum up the system.
The most precious thing we have is our freedom to choose. Due to documentaries like The Truth About Vaccines, people across the globe are becoming educated about informed medical consent, freedom of choice, potential serious adverse reactions from vaccines, and conflicts of interest, including Dr. Pan, who, according to the Sacramento Bee, received $95,000 from pharmaceutical lobbyists prior to the passage of Senate Bill 277. Based on historical trends, whatever happens in California typically trickles down throughout the rest of the 50 states. And according to Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, who has her finger on the pulse of vaccine legislation, Senate Bill 277 is to be the model for all 50 states. Dr. Tenpenny also shared some valuable information on a government initiative called Healthy People 2020.
we talk so much, Ty, about all the things that have to do with kids and pediatricians. I think it's really important to understand, that adults are being put into this pot of mandatory too. With Healthy People 2020 and with the use of electronic medical records.
Okay.
I mean, electronic health records came into vogue in around 2010 when when all doctors were told you're going to have to start using these electronic medical records in order to get billed. So we need to have you install these in your office. Well, the problem is how expensive they were. You had to buy a module from the government. If you bought a Medicaid module, it was $43,000 per physician in the practice. Well, if there were 4 people in the practice, it's 43,000 times 4. And the same thing, you had to buy a Medicare module, which was $62,000 per module. So, physicians' offices are small businesses. I mean, where are you ever going to recoup that investment? Like, never. So the government said, not a problem. We'll pay it for you. And in exchange for that, you just have to give us all the data. And so each year, starting in 2010, which of course was when Obamacare came into being, by 2012, they installed more than 500,000 physicians across the country had bought into the system, and they were teaching them how to use the electronic medical records. That each year, they had to add a few more things, a few more boxes that needed to be checked, and that data gone off to the government. And in 2016, they added the box that needed to be checked, was your immunization status. And that goes into what's called the information, the immunization information system, or the local, regional, and district vaccine registry. And your information goes into this registry to always be there. And the intention of these registries are to be cradle to grave tracking of your vaccination status. The National Adult Vaccine Plan was released in February of 2015. And at the same time, they introduced an implementation plan. And some of the things that have been burbling around in the background that haven't come to the forefront yet in terms of implementation are, if you're not fully vaccinated, will you be able to travel? Will you be able to renew your driver's license? Will you be able to go to a public place like a football game or a basketball game? Will you be able to go to a grocery store unless you can show that you are fully vaccinated? That's the type of plan that's coming down the road. And I just see these people as just needle-wheeling maniacs that every single person needs to be injected with every possible vaccine. And the adult vaccination plan actually has language in it that says that they want adults to demand and request their vaccines, and if they haven't demanded and requested them, that they will be offered to them. They will have financial incentives to give it, and it is to be required for every vaccine that's currently on the market and every vaccine in the future. And we know there are at least 140 vaccines in the developmental pipeline. When a lot of people listen to the Truth About Vaccines seminar, or they listen to talks about vaccines, they say, well, my kids are past that. I don't have to worry about that anymore. I don't have to make that decision. Or, my kids are having grandkids and they don't ever listen to me anyways. But here's the thing. Many of these vaccines that are now in development are headed directly towards adolescents and adults. And the adult vaccination plan is a 5-year escalated, ramped up system to get people on board by 2020 for the implementation of the Healthy People 2020 guidelines that have become goals.
For those that are watching, Sherry, what exactly is Healthy People 2020?
It actually started in 1990 when the Surgeon General came forth and worked with the Department of Health at that time, and they created what was called the Healthy People Guidelines for 1990. And what they looked at is with the health of our overall society, and they were laudable goals. They were looking at things like smoking cessation and wearing motorcycle helmets and obesity and clean water. And so they set up goals to go from 1990 to 2000 and to see where we could get. And so every decade they have established these new goals. So there was goals from 2000 to 2010, and then in 2010 they created the goals to be set up for 2020. And so the difference is that the original goals in 1990, there were 15 goals and about 225 objectives. In the Healthy People 2020 guidelines, there are 44 goals and 1,200 objectives to look at every single corner of our health and every single corner of our life. And there's a sector in there for vaccines that they want to have 90% of the population vaccinated with flu shots, DPT shots, MMR, and all of these were set up initially to be guidelines, but they have become goals. And the goals now, one of the steps in the goals is to take away your right to refuse. So what Healthy People 2020 is supposed to do is it's supposed to get everybody vaccinated and get everybody on board and get all the funding for adults and adolescents. And how this all kind of came about at the same time as we developed the Healthy People 2020 guidelines, it started in 2010. In 2010, this was declared the decade of vaccines. And in 2010, the Gates Foundation put up $10 million to start this to be the decade of vaccines. And within this decade of vaccines from 2010 to 2020, in these Healthy People guidelines, we need to have electronic medical records and tracking. We need to take away people's right to refuse. We need to ramp up all of these guidelines and turn them into goals. And they are well on their way. I mean, that's really, we're at 2017. We only have 3 years left for people to become really aware of this and get involved in not allowing this to happen in the future.
So this is something that literally affects everyone that's watching this program.
Everyone, not here and around the world, because in 2000, the Gates Foundation funded an organization called Gavi, which is the Global Alliance for Vaccination and Immunization. They started that organization with a donation of $750 million. Since that time, they have invested $6.8 billion into vaccinating the world.
Dr. Tenpenny mentioned forced vaccines for adults several times. I've read the literature, and it certainly does appear that one of the purposes of the Healthy People 2020 initiative is to vaccinate all adults as well as children and to eliminate their choice, to eliminate their right to refuse. These are fundamental rights.
To me, there is no more fundamental right in the U.S. than what we put in our body. We have fundamental rights to property and free speech. But if we don't have a fundamental right to what goes in our body, when nobody else is responsible for the consequences, nobody's taking liability, and we are going to be stuck financially and mentally and emotionally, physically with those repercussions, what more fundamental right do we have than what goes in our body? And I think right now our founding fathers are rolling over in their graves, because if we have that medical right taken away from us, what good are any other rights? To me, this is the most important conversation right now. We have to keep our rights and our choice as to what goes into our body.
After I came out of med school, I vaccinated thousands of children, and it's one of my biggest regrets in life that I did that, because I didn't know any better, and I trusted them, blindly trusted them, that they were telling the truth. And many physicians were like me. They believed that they're being told the truth. They don't have the time, effort, or energy or resources to carefully examine it themselves. But if they did, they would reach inevitably, if they were objective, rational, that there's no other conclusion that you could reach, that there's some serious potential problems here that have to be seriously examined, and you have to weigh the evidence. And in some cases, if you've objectively you've done your due diligence and you reach a conclusion you want to vaccinate, then it's fine. I think it should be a choice, but it shouldn't be forced on anyone.
Mandatory vaccination, forced vaccination, no exceptions, no exemptions, vaccine policies and laws are completely contrary to the founding principles of the United States of America. I do not believe Americans, if they really understand what is happening here, will stand for it. I believe that Americans who understand the truth about how many people are being hurt by vaccines will stand up and fight for their freedom.
As an attorney, Allison, you did say that's assault and battery when they take the child and force the vaccine.
Against the parent's will, against the child's will, you are physically, it's a physical touching of another without their consent. That's assault. That's battery. The anticipation of that battery is actually assault.
Have you seen the government or the CPS try to step in to parents that would not vaccinate?
Oh, absolutely. There have been forced vaccinations. Downright forced vaccinations, where they will come and remove the child and take custody of the child legally and bring that child so-called up to standard or code of where that child is supposed to be. And it's mandated by the state under the guise of the child is in a public school. Well, guess what? A child has a fundamental right to a free public education. So you can't take one fundamental right, which is the right not to be vaccinated, and conjoin and take away another fundamental right, which is to a free public education. But that's what's happening. The state is saying if you're going to have your child in, and not only a public school, a private school. Well, what's going on with that? So the medical exemptions, the religious exemptions, the personal belief exemptions, that's all going out the window. So there's a push to have a one set frame of mind of how all children need to be based on scientific data that is not conclusive, okay? And I'm not a doctor, I'm not gonna argue that position. What I do know is that it is assault and battery to mandatorily give a child a permanent vaccination that will change the course of his or her life on a basis where the court takes the child over for a temporary period of time. And now here you are, I'm going to give you back now a damaged child. You gave me a whole child, I'm going to give you back a damaged child. And then the state wants to say, oh, well, hands off. Oh, now your child is thrown into autism? Oh, well.
This is where it's all headed. Governments working in conspiracy with vaccine manufacturers to commit acts of extreme violence against families that do not obediently accept vaccine interventions. This is the war against humanity. This is scientific totalitarianism. This is vaccine violence. And it is the ultimate extension of bad medicine to administer and enforce medicine at gunpoint. That's what this family is going through, and that is where it's all headed in California, across the United States, and everywhere around the world if we don't change.
If we do not have the right to decide what we do or don't allow in our body, especially when that which we're talking about has been declared unavoidably unsafe by the United States Supreme Court in 2011, which means inherently dangerous. When we don't have the right to decide whether or not we want to allow 70 plus dangerous, inherently dangerous products into our children or ourselves, then what meaningful rights do we have left?
I don't know about other countries of the world, but in the United States, we cherish our fundamental rights, which include freedom of speech and freedom of choice when it comes to medical procedures and our fundamental freedom of thought. Nobody can tell us what to think.
When people don't want you to think, when they only want you to believe and trust what they say and obey the orders that they give, they're not going to want you to be educated. They're not going to want you to ask questions. They're not going to want to have to answer the questions that you ask. This is a very authoritarian, paternalistic attitude that pediatricians and all of those who are giving vaccines, those who are making policy for vaccines, are trying to foist upon us. And in America, we don't have a tradition of particularly liking authoritarian type approach. In America, we're used to having the freedom of speech, freedom of thought, the ability to follow our conscience, the ability to hold religious beliefs. We're not a society that is used to being told what we can think and what we can do.
Every story about kids who've been vaccine injured, the parents almost always state, I didn't want to do it. I knew it was wrong. I had this gut feeling, but my doctor bullied me into doing it.
Many pediatricians in the United States will kick families out of their practice if they choose not to vaccinate. So how can you have informed consent if you choose not to vaccinate, you're told you cannot be my patient anymore, I will not see your family?
The scenario that Dr. Jennifer Margulis just described is exactly what happened to my wife Charlene upon the birth of our first daughter, Brianna.
we vaccinated Brianna, and at her 9-month visit, the well visit, I gave her over to the doctors to get her vaccinated, her routine vaccinations. And this was back in 2001. She was born in 2000, of course. And so when they took her and vaccinated her, I took her home, and I just remember, you remember, she was covered from head to toe with a terrible rash, and it was just, it was awful, and I didn't know what was wrong with her. And I remember bringing her into the pediatrician, asking, well, I don't know what's wrong. And they said, oh, no big deal, that's just eczema, it happens all the time, just put some nice lotion on there and she'll be fine. And then shortly after that, I noticed she was just starting to be very verbal with ba, 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 ba. And that just stopped. And I was so alarmed, and I was so in tune with her as her mother that I knew something went south, something was wrong. And I was so concerned, and so I was telling the pediatrician my concerns in Pittsburgh, and it was a woman, and she was so sympathetic, and I felt like she really cared, and she listened, and she would just be sympathetic to my concerns. And then one day she was just gone. She quit the practice, and she had a family, and she was going to take care of her family, and so a young man took over the practice. And so I continued the conversation with him just as I was with this nice woman. And this man was completely different. When I told him my concern about the MMR specifically because of the symptoms we were seeing with Brianna, her regression in her speech and even her movements were regressing. And I just will never forget his smug, condescending attitude when I verbalized these concerns. I just assumed that he would be akin to this woman that was sympathetic, but he just put his nose in the air and said, you can get more mercury from a fish stick than vaccines. We do not subscribe to that nonsense here. If you do not vaccinate, you are no longer welcomed at our practice. And me, being a first-time mother, I believed that he knew more than I did, though it was a bit offensive, the way that he was treating me, so condescending. I thought about that, and I thought, he knows what he's talking about. I brought Brianna in, and I handed that precious little baby over, and I allowed her to be vaccinated once again because of that intimidation tactic that doctor used on me. Thankfully, Brianna is just one of the smartest 16-year-old, beautiful young ladies I've ever known. She's so intelligent, and she's so healthy, and she's doing everything she can, as you know, exercising, eating right, and all those things. And she has a bright mind. I'm very grateful because we did, for a little time, see her going south. Now, in hindsight, I just have to wonder, did she see this happening on a regular basis and she just couldn't allow herself to be a part of this system anymore, and so she just quit? Because there was something definitely different in her. She really cared. And that meant so much, and that's what we need more of. We need doctors that really care.
What parents really need to have is someone in their community that is a medical professional, such as a nurse practitioner, a pediatric chiropractor, a naturopath, or even their mother or their grandmother who's raised children before. Because if you have a new baby, what you kind of want to know is this normal? Are they sick enough that I should be concerned? You know, they're kind of fussy. Should I take them to the pediatrician? They just need a partner in that. And instead, they take them to the pediatrician, and the pediatrician say, no, you have to vaccinate. If you're not going to be vaccinated, we're going to kick you out of the practice.
The number one question that people write me almost every week. I get somebody said I just asked my pediatrician some questions about vaccines, and he fired me.
Yeah.
And what do I tell them? I tell them you should be thankful that he was honest enough to end your dysfunctional relationship with him.
True.
Go find somebody that will respect your views and respect you and your family and the decisions that you want to jointly make.
Yeah.
with your healthcare practitioner.
As Neil Miller just described, it's vitally important to find a pediatrician that respects your wishes and wants to and will work jointly with you, especially when it comes to vaccines, which may have benefits, but they also have risks.
Everyone knows there's a risk-benefit to every decision we make. Parents know that all the time. The question is there a greater risk to vaccination than there is to a benefit? More and more the science is showing, more and more life experience is showing that there is a greater risk to vaccination than there is benefit. The public is learning this. They are learning it firsthand, and they're learning it by doing their research. And every attempt is being made to stop them from learning it. The science is clear. The vaccine ingredients are clearly poisoning the body and the brain. We're told vaccines are safe. And so anybody who reads that article, vaccines are safe, they've never read below to see, well, have the ingredients been tested? To see if they enter the brain? To see if they impair mitochondria? The blood-brain barrier has the highest concentration of mitochondria of anywhere in the body. Vaccine materials can go right through it. Penetrate it, destroy it, go right into the brain.
Parents need to educate themselves about what's in a vaccine, what are the benefits and risks of vaccinating, and then make the best choice they can for their children. I don't belittle parents who vaccinate their children. I don't belittle parents who refuse vaccinations for their children. We're all trying to make the best choices for our kids. But I wouldn't blindly allow a doctor to give your child 72 vaccines and tell you that everything's safe and effective with them without you reading about it and understanding what's in each of those vaccines. If we don't change the trajectory of how many vaccines we're giving our children, I see a disaster happening in our country. Our kids are becoming sicker and sicker. There's more autism, there's more ADD, there's more cancer, there's more asthma, there's more allergies, there's more severe allergies, including anaphylaxis. And I fear this is all going to get worse and come to a tipping point where economically our society just can't go on like this. There's just going to be too many sick kids.
When I even think about it, I was brought to tears because I know that I unintentionally, under the law of unintended consequences, was responsible for a lot of this damage because in my efforts to comply with the standard recommendations of providing vaccines, knowing that I unquestionably caused some damage in many of these children, it's just really hard to live with. And I think that may be one of the challenges to many physicians even seeking to understand this process, because if they are causing damage, how do they live with that? How do they live with that? It's an incredible emotional challenge to reconcile.
Dr. Mercola is just one of many physicians who have regrets for damage that they may have inflicted due to the vaccines they gave their patients. Freedom is a fundamental tenet of the United States. I believe that it is a moral imperative to fight for choice in vaccines and to tell the truth about vaccines, including both the benefits and the risks. The country that we grew up believing that we lived in is vanishing.
It is, and it's happening in a lot of areas, but it's happening especially in this area. Individual autonomy, the right to protect bodily integrity, the human right to informed consent to medical risk-taking, the human right to follow our conscience, to follow our religious beliefs. These are fundamental rights that define what freedom really means. So if the government takes that away from us, we're no better than slaves. We're no better than people who can be used. We have to have the right to have control over what goes into our bodies and the bodies of our minor children that we are responsible for legally and morally. When something happens to our children, there is no one who loves our children like we do. The parents, the mothers and fathers. We have a moral duty to fight for these rights.
We need 3 things to happen immediately in our country. We need vaccine mandates to be banned in all 50 states. Medicine should never be mandated. We learned that during World War II, and we have the Nuremberg Code to ensure that that never happens again, and we are a signer. We need to fully restore individual and parental rights to make any and all medical decisions for oneself or one's children. And we also need to immediately repeal the 1986 Act. As I said, an act that never should have happened. What should have happened on that day is the complete moratorium on vaccinations until we got to the bottom of why so many were being harmed and killed by them. Common sense. We've lost common sense. We've lost the ethical practice of medicine in our country. The gold standard of ethical medicine is that of prior, free, and informed consent. And in the case of vaccines, there can't even be informed consent. As you and I have already discussed, there have been no proper safety studies and no comparison studies. So any doctor offering informed consent is really doing nothing more than either parroting pharmaceutical companies, the CDC, or offering their personal opinion. It is my opinion that no doctor can give or receive informed consent regarding vaccinations at this point in time.
If the doctors are being truthful and taking the time to tell people the truth and not using scare tactics to get the patient in and out as fast as possible, to get the procedure done as quick as possible, patients are going to learn the truth. We need to tell them the truth and let them make the informed decision. And when they see what the risks are, many are going to opt out of these dangerous procedures, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing for their health, it's a good thing for their society, and it's a good thing for the future of medicine.
Humanity has been ruled by myths, false narratives for a very long time. How can all the people of North Korea believe that Kim Jong-un is their god? Why do they believe that? It's the same reason that people in America believe vaccines are safe. It's because that's what they've been told. The people of North Korea are genetically almost identical to you and me. Very few differences in our genetic code. We're born the same way, we have the same biology, we live on the same planet, we breathe the same air. How could they believe something so crazy? And we, in America, we think everything we believe makes perfect sense. The truth is, we need to look at our own belief systems. We need to ask questions, skeptical, rational questions about what we believe. Our medical system is based on layer upon layer of false mythologies.
There's definitely a need for surgery. There's definitely a need for emergency medicine. There's some great work that's done in that field of conventional medicine. But I can practice medicine without using pharmaceuticals. And that is a blow to me, having been trained in conventional medicine. And it's a blow to most physicians to realize that medicine is not needed most of the time in children. What's needed is an understanding of what's really going on physiologically and how to help children move through those states of symptoms so that they can heal and get better.
Well, there's a quote by Howard Zinn, and this was during the Vietnam War, with this spirit, and he said, we don't have to engage in acts, grand heroic acts, to participate in this change. Small acts, when multiplied by millions, can change the world. So I think everyone can disobey in their own way and know that we're all going towards the same goal. And this has united us, unfortunately and fortunately. An overreaching pharmaceutical industry has united us, and we're going to take back the medical system one way or the other.
Small acts multiplied numerous times is the way to take back the system. All we want is for the system to include freedom of choice in vaccines. Here's a few telling quotes from experts who were interviewed for The Truth About Vaccines.
Be very careful what you do with vaccines. So I'm particularly concerned about any vaccines during pregnancy. Until you have really good long-term studies on primates, let's even start with rats, shall we? But let's move on to primates and let's follow the offspring for a decade and look at health outcomes, neurological outcomes. Until that's done, come on. You know, we tell pregnant women don't eat fish, it's too high in mercury, but we're going to inject a mercury-laden flu shot. It's insanity. So no vaccines while you're pregnant. That's absolutely critical. And that's a time when I'm meeting with a new couple, if you're a new couple and you're thinking, what can I do? You are the world. If you're the pregnant mama, that's the environment. So what you eat, what you drink, stress. Stress is a huge toxin. So I always like to emphasize, if it's a partner or a spouse, treat her like a queen. And I'm telling you, just turn off the TV. That's usually a stressor. And get out in the garden if you're not in a snow zone. You know, I mean, just do what you can to just be Mother Earth. That is a huge benefit to the development of that developing brain and neurological system. And just be careful what you're putting in your system. The uterus shunts nutrients, but it also shunts toxins to the unborn child. So do everything you can to limit toxins, and then as soon as they're born, don't forget, vaccines include toxins. Do not get the hepatitis B vaccine if you, the birth mother, does not have hepatitis B. I mean, that one's a no-brainer. And then look very carefully at the rest of the vaccines, sort of as we outlined in the vaccine-friendly plan. At the very least, be that cautious. And if you have any risk factors, family history of autism, neurological disease, autoimmune disorders, you might choose to do none. I know that sounds crazy for a pediatrician to say, but until we have better data, you've got to be cautious. Precautionary principle.
Dr. Wakefield, last question for you. If you had a young child now, what would you do as far as vaccinating or not vaccinating?
Just a little backstory to this. When I first got involved, based upon the parent's story, I was looking at MMR. I was concerned about that. The more I got involved in it, the more concerned I became. I started hearing from the US about the thimerosal mercury preservative, about aluminum as an adjuvant, about formaldehyde, fetal cells, contaminants, retroviruses, and I came to the conclusion, after a lot of research, that if I had a baby now, I would not give them a vaccine until someone can prove to me that the vaccines are individually and collectively safe, that the schedule is safe. There's been no testing of that schedule, and so at the moment, I wouldn't give a newborn baby of mine any vaccines. And when I come to meetings like the one we're at now, CalJam, where chiropractors bring their babies, they actually bring them and they sit at the back. The babies are so well behaved, and you look at them and they engage you. They've got great eye contact, they engage, they are so far ahead of the children we see in the community. Yeah. And they've never had a vaccine. It makes you think, wow, it's terrifying. It's actually terrifying to see how healthy they are, because it makes you realize that we have done something really very, very bad.
I was born to do this. This is my passion. I have 2 young boys, 3 and 8 years old. And I'm doing this for my boys, and I'm doing this for all the other children out there. They deserve to not be maimed and killed by vaccines. They deserve better. The parents are brainwashed, and they need to know the truth. The doctors are brainwashed, and they need doctors to come out of the closet, like my husband, and speak the truth and shout it from the rooftops, because this is the only way we're going to change the position of the world. It was very scary, having the death threats, having the phone calls to the office, to the home. CNN, was stalking my husband even at his practice, accusing him of going dark, accusing him of endangering the lives of other children. You cannot risk the life of one child to supposedly protect the life of another child. That is my child, and it is my responsibility to protect my child. I know the damage that vaccines cause. I know what's in a vaccine. I've done the research, the proper research. And not only are the vaccines dangerous, the infections they're intended to prevent are benign. Not only are these infections benign, we want our children to catch these infections because they confer immunity for a lifetime, something a vaccine will never do, and they protect us against much more harmful disease like cancer, Alzheimer's, autoimmune disease, the same diseases that the vaccines are actually causing.
We were receiving emails like, "You better hope I don't see you walking down the street. I hope your children die of measles," as if my children, my healthy 2 boys that were breastfed, given organic food, given love, given natural immune boosters, as if they are going to get sick from the measles or chicken pox or any of these other fear-mongering viral and bacterial infections. Natural immunity will prevail every time. And then people call the office and make comments on the phone. But you know what? We've made so many friends through this, so many amazing people that we've met that are on our side, and the doctors are there, the MDs, the DOs, the PhDs, the chiropractors, the naturopaths, the homeopaths. We've all got to come together and speak out and speak the truth, and only then will the truth prevail, and we're going to win this war.
I believe that Dr. Wolfson is correct. The truth will prevail. The light of truth will be victorious. And if your primary goal is to spread truth, help humanity, and make sure that children are healthy, then I believe you will be able to look back at the end of your life and be satisfied.
You know, at the end of my life, I'd like to look back and feel like I'd been as good to other people as I could. And so that's been a guiding light in my life, and certainly in my wife's life and our children's lives. I think people think about science as being facts and cold and hard intellectual pursuit, but it's not really. Hardly anything we do, including in science, does not have an impact on other people. That's what protecting public health and the environment is all about. It's what vaccines are supposed to be about, protecting our health. But when you go to work for a university or a government agency and you find out it's not really about that in the real world, it's about making money, that's an eye-opener. And you can either bail out, or the choice I took was to stay in the system and fight it, learn about it, pass that information on to others, and hopefully they can, in a more educated way, deal with it.
I believe within 1 year, this movement would get as much steam as Black Lives Matter, as the female movement that we're seeing right now, this too. But when this one comes out, and the press is absent from telling the people the truth, we believe that this one will cause so much anger, because when you attack babies, that's not good. And there are countries who have better vaccines than we do in America. Why we can't go to Switzerland and say, hey, show us what you've done.
Right.
Because we're not against vaccines. We just want safe vaccines.
Last note, I know you're a believer also. Hosea 4:6 says that my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge.
Right.
We just need to educate ourselves, just knowledge in every aspect of our lives. And I've always told people, we advocate 4 things. You know, number 1, parents, educate yourself. Number 2, let doctors be doctors. Let them have an opinion on whether to vaccinate or not vaccinate. Number 3, don't force vaccines on parents. Let them have a choice. And number 4, we should demand the same safety studies on vaccines as any other pharmaceutical drug. And we all know that's not what's happening. Those are the 4 things. And in the end, after that, we've been saying this consistently. After those 4 things, if you want to vaccinate, that's on you. That's it. But don't tell me that I have to or someone else. Everyone can have an opinion. And we have freedom of thought so far, for now. And so I support that. So I just support choice in vaccines.
My name is Heidi, and my son, Ben, is vaccine injured, and he now has autism. And I just want to say how happy I am today to share my story with you. And I'm just thrilled to know that the documentary, The Truth About Cancer, is leading to the truth about vaccines. And the more people that can hear this message, the better. And if you're out there and you think you're alone, you're not. It takes a village. So Ben was born right on time, came right on his due date, and was a very, very healthy boy. I'm going to try to get through this without crying. He was very healthy up until about 15 months. And it was at that time I thought it was his well visit, and I took him in for at that time he was due for his MMR vaccine. Thankfully, he had an ear infection, so that delayed it 3 months. So they didn't want to give him the vaccine when he was on an antibiotic for the ear infection. But unfortunately, that at that point pushed his immune system down. And when he was 18 months, we went back for the MMR. And right after the MMR, I wouldn't say right away, but like it was kind of a gradual. A few weeks after, we noticed a very significant decrease in eye contact. He had language that he had lost. So he had lost significant amounts of language. He developed explosive diarrhea, and he would play in the perimeter of the park, the playground, wherever we were. He just would isolate himself to the garden or on the outside of the playground. And there was a few scary moments where I thought, where is he? I thought we had lost him. And as a mother, your heart's pounding out of your chest thinking, where's my boy? And he would just kind of wander off, and we couldn't keep track of him. As a mother, as a parent, you believe what the doctors tell you. And I thought, as an occupational therapist, I had kids that were on the spectrum when I was in the school system, that I had mothers tell me, oh, it was the vaccines, And in the back of my mind, I kind of put it in the way back of my mind. And as a therapist, I thought, oh, they're just trying to blame something on autism. Well, if I would have listened to my heart, I would have listened to those mothers that were trying to warn me, which is, I've turned into that mom because I'm warning other mothers about the injury that could happen, not to every child, but what one works for one child won't work for another, so one size doesn't fit all. But to answer your question, I have blamed myself for a long time. And I remember one of my mentors and autism heroes, Jenny McCarthy, who I've met several times on this journey, she went through that as well. She blamed herself. And I remember Jim Carrey telling her, to heal it, you need to feel it. And so I have embraced that, because like Jenny and many other moms, we do blame ourselves because we put our child in danger without knowing it. So I had to face that and really feel it and cry for a long time and start to heal, because we didn't intend to hurt our babies. So when he was 3, I told you already, he was diagnosed with autism. And I knew, thankfully, as an occupational therapist working in pediatrics, it was really a God thing that probably 80% of my caseload, these kids had autism. And I knew that the kids on a gluten-free diet were doing the best. So I told my husband, you know what? I know it's going to be a pain in the neck, but the kids that are on this specific diet are doing the best. And so he said, look, whatever you want to do, I fully support you. So shortly, right before the gluten-free diet, that was the first intervention we did, because I thought, you have direct access to food. I can certainly change my child's diet. So we took away gluten first and then dairy next. But I noticed, just removing gluten 3 weeks into the diet, okay, you have to remember, this kid had very little eye contact, had lost language, and would isolate himself. So 3 weeks into the diet, he put his hand on the door, looked right at me, and said, want to go outside? And I was like, we are doing this. I knew right away, luckily for my clients, about the gut-brain connection, and I saw within 3 weeks that it was working for my son. And so after removing gluten, we decided, okay, now it's time to remove dairy. Even though he didn't eat a lot of dairy, I thought, let's just remove it entirely. And that helped his constipation issues. So by just removing those two things, you could see the decrease in inflammation because of his increased language, increased eye contact, and because of his issues with his gut and not being so constipated. So that was from age 3, and then we continued till, let's see, when he was about 4, I went to my first DAN conference, Defeat Autism Now, in Anaheim, and that's when I met Dr. Jeff Bradstreet. Again, I'm going to try not to cry because he's no longer with us, but that man really put a dent in my child's microbiome. And so not only were we on the diet, he helped us identify that Ben had huge amounts of candida yeast in his gut that were at a very toxic level. And he also had a really bad virus called bacteria, which is called Clostridia. So we went on an antibacterial medication and antifungals, and doing a routine liver function tests to make sure he was tolerating that okay. And So we did that for about 2 years, and then we tried hyperbaric oxygen therapy. We rented it from Bradstreet. We rented a soft chamber. Okay, so every night my husband went into the hyperbaric oxygen chamber with Ben. Thankfully, because I'm claustrophobic, I couldn't do it. So he went into this chamber, which is probably about, if you guys aren't familiar, is about the size of like a conference table, like a 3 foot by like 9 foot, 8 foot, 9 foot in length. And so they call them dives. Every time you go in for a dive. So we rented this from Bradstreet. He said, just try it. You know, it's going to give him the oxygen that he needs. So because we had healed his gut, you have to do that first. Heal the gut through the diet and the medications that we did. And then you want to feed the good cells with the oxygen. So that's the purpose of the hyperbarics. So I want to say maybe 10 dives. So 10 days into the hyperbarics, he started interacting with his brother. So they immediately started playing chase around the house. And we were like, wow, he actually knows he has a brother, and they're interacting. So that was pretty amazing. So once we started the Bravo, just 3 days of the Bravo probiotic yogurt, taking it orally, he stopped wetting the bed. His eye contact was getting better. His social interaction was improving. And that's when I met Dr. Marco Ruggiero, who you met the other day. And we learned very quickly that we just lived 3 miles from each other. And so those emails led to phone calls. Phone calls led to in-person meetings with he and I and his wife, Dr. Piccini. And that's when he asked me almost 1 year ago to share the stage with him at Autism One. And shortly before that, we had started Rerum, R-E-R-U-M, which is a vitamin D oral emulsion that targets bad cells of the immune system and builds up the immune system and kills the bad cells. So we started on a protocol, kind of building on everything that we had done. So we moved from just being gluten-free, dairy-free to transitioning over to the ketogenic diet. And then we were already on the Bravo probiotic yogurt, and then we started Rerum, the oral emulsion, the vitamin D emulsion, and then also added in MyAmino. It's overwhelming as a parent, because you think something's wrong with you, and people think you're crazy. How could it be the vaccine? My kid's fine. And until now, till all of this evidence come out, thank God for Dr. Andrew Wakefield and Polly Tomey and Del Bigtree and all these heroes, and now Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and our president, who's fully supporting us. We just want to get the truth out there. The truth is, we don't want any other baby to be part of our club. And it's not just autism, it's the Gardasil vaccine and the Hep B vaccine. Babies are dying as we speak because we don't have any vaccine safety program. So it's, to answer your question, it's been very hard as a mom because, like I said in the beginning, we did everything that the doctors told us and what Western medicine believes is healthy. And we're not an anti-vaccine community. We believe in vaccines, otherwise we would not have gotten the vaccine for our child. But we just want to take the junk out.
Wow, I can't believe it. The 7 days are over. The 7-part docuseries, The Truth About Vaccines, is done. I hope you've learned a lot over these last 7 days. I know that I certainly learned quite a bit as I was preparing this docuseries. Now, in the end, we're not going to all agree about vaccines. But regardless of where you stand on vaccines, whether you want to vaccinate according to the full schedule or delay vaccines or not vaccinate at all, I think there's one point that we can all agree on. We love our children, and we want our children to be healthy. It's our desire that this docuseries over the last 7 days has spurred debate and discussion on this vitally important topic. And it's also our desire that now you are empowered with information so that you can make a wise decision to keep you and your family healthy and live a long life. Thanks for watching. God bless all of you.
I think that it's true that at any given moment when we make a choice, we really are just doing the best that we can with what we have at that moment. So if we go back and we regret choices we made, that really doesn't serve us or anyone else. And it's really just about understanding and compassion for oneself. So that's the message I would really want to bring to the table, that true healing and making better choices will really happen much quicker if we can let go of guilt for things that we can't change any longer. And so please don't feel that you have harmed anyone. The only harm you're doing is that if you're not letting go of that and just making better choices now.
The future of medicine is a future that will not involve injecting children with toxic chemicals and calling it immunization. There is a much better way to protect the lives of children, and that I want to help that future arrive more quickly. I want to advance medicine. I want to see medicine progress past the dark ages under which it operates today. We live in a time when whistleblowers like myself, scientists like myself, are routinely threatened with violence by vaccine industry operators and biotech industry shills. We live in a dangerous time. I will not be intimidated into silence. They've tried everything they can think of. It hasn't worked. And now I think they've given up at this point. It doesn't work. And again, because I'm driven by a divine mission. My spirit is bulletproof, as is yours. You cannot kill an idea with violence. You cannot kill the truth with threats. Every truth that I reveal through my work lives on beyond me. Every single truth lives on. So we've already won, man. We've already won. It's just a matter of time before it all comes out. The light of truth always wins.